preaching the good news is not something I can boast about. I am compelled by God to do it. How terrible for me if I didn't preach the good news. If I were doing this on my own initiative, I would deserve payment. But I have no choice, for God has given me this sacred trust. What then is my pay? It is the opportunity to preach the good news without charging anyone. That's why I never demand my rights when I preach the good news. Even though I am a free man with no master, I have become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ. When I was with the Jews, I lived like a Jew to bring the Jews to Christ. When I was with those who follow the Jewish law, I lived too under that law. Even though I'm not subject to the law, I did this so I could bring to Christ those who are under the law. When I am with the Gentiles who do not follow the Jewish law, I live too apart from that law so I can bring them to Christ. But I do not ignore the law of God. I obey the law of Christ. When I am with those who are weak, I share their weakness, for I want to bring the weak to Christ. Yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. I do everything to spread the good news and share in its blessing.
Spoke into darkness, created the light. prior to today's reading, Paul was explaining to the Corinthians that one who preaches the gospel is worth his keep. But Paul would not presume that of the Corinthian church because that might enmesh him in their power struggles. There was a great deal of politicking that could come with taking a wage from those you served in the Corinthian context. The one who provided in that culture might presume to have some authority over the spiritual teacher due to financial contributions. And that could make for a really hairy situation. But Paul didn't preach to make a living. He preached because preaching was what he had to do. It was the natural byproduct of his personal relationship with Christ. He couldn't not preach the gospel. He was compelled to do it, the letter tells us. In fact, if Paul did not want to preach the gospel, he was still bound to do so because of what he owed Christ for his freedom. He was discharging the trust that was put into him when he accepted the gift of salvation, the trust to offer that gift to others. It's a good reminder that we work as the Lord in all things, because we don't answer to those who fail to respond to our sharing of hope. We don't answer primarily to any earthly authority. We have one authority that we respond to, and that's God. That's why Paul would be all things to all people. He would be like one under the law with those who are under the law, and be like the weak around the weak, because something larger was at the root. These people all needed salvation. We belong to God, and in his love, he saved us. The lost belong to God, and he sent us to go back and bring as many to salvation with us as we can. That's really all that matters. God's gains. Remember when John the Baptist was losing disciples to Jesus? He responded, "He must increase, I must decrease." That's an excellent attitude we could all take as a breath prayer or a mantra. In your workplace, in your family, in your clubs and social settings. Really, these relationships are opportunities more than anything for people to meet Christ through us, that he might increase. They're not in place so that we may have more fun or a better car or a promotion. The only promotion that is on our mind is the promotion to glory of all that we meet. We care for their souls, but we also care about them. We care where they end up eternally, and we care that they are restored in relationship with their loving Creator. Sometimes that might even mean having the grace to let them be our servant too. There was an 80s worship song called "Show Your Power" by the rock band Petra. It has a great line, "We ask not for riches, but look to the cross. And for our inheritance, give us the lost." Is that our mindset in our relationships? Do we have the mind of Christ? I don't always, I must confess. Sometimes I fear that my relationships with others might simply dry up if I share the gospel too aggressively. I want all my friends to be saved, and yet I don't want to be a stumbling block with my approach. But I'm not sure aggressive is always the right approach. Paul shared the gospel, we heard, by finding commonality with people. These were real relationships, and he used them to bring salvation into those houses that he was welcomed into. We should have real relationships too. Not phony relationships with a transaction hidden just below the surface. We don't want to end up having a reputation given to Christ like that of the Corinthians. We don't want people to have a distrust for God and his followers. We must be authentic. We don't want to have a politicking approach with expectations. We just want to ensure that as far as it depends on us, we will always be available to share the hope we have as the opportunities arise. And they will. Relationships are the vehicles of our love for our neighbor. Paul went beyond his obligation with the Corinthians. He had a right to be paid for his ministry, but he would never accept that. He kept the ledger in his favor, that he was always the one showing love and care, not the one on the take. Maybe when we give people a steady diet of loving them sacrificially, really listening to them, caring deeply for their felt needs, and doing good works of service for them, they won't mind if we go on with the God talk. In fact, they might just open up to it.